March 6, 1940, 11:47 a.m. The frozen forests of Kala, Finland. Simo Häyhä lay motionless in the snow, his white camouflage making him invisible against the landscape. For 98 days, he had done this same thing, in the same positions, hunting Soviet soldiers. Over 500 men had died by his rifle. The Soviets called him the White Death. They feared him more than artillery, more than tanks, more than their own officers. Then, in an instant, everything changed. An explosive bullet hit him in the face, destroying his lower jaw. The impact should have killed him instantly. Instead, Häyhä would survive to become the most successful sniper in the history of modern warfare. But the question nobody asks is the one that matters most. How did a 33-year-old farmer kill more enemies in 100 days than most soldiers kill in an entire war? And why did he refuse to use the one tool that every other sniper considered essential? This is a story about preparation meeting opportunities, about understanding your environment better than your enemy, and about the decisions that turn ordinary men into legends. If you want more deep dives into the individuals who shaped history through skill and strategy, hit subscribe. We're building something special here. What made Häyhä different wasn't just his kill count. It was that he achieved it in the worst possible conditions imaginable, against an enemy that outnumbered Finnish forces 50-1, and he did it using methods that defied every conventional understanding of how snipers were supposed to work. When he was finally shot on March 6th, the war was only days from ending. The Soviets had spent 3 months trying to kill one man. They failed. And the way Häyhä survived that final shot tells you everything about why he was so effective in the first place. Simo Häyhä was not a soldier by training or temperament. Before November 1939, he was a farmer in the small Finnish village of Rotjärvi, near the Soviet border. He was short, just 5 foot 3 inches tall, quiet, and unremarkable in almost every way. He had served his mandatory year in the Finnish military like every Finnish man, but that had been years earlier. What made Häyhä different from other farmers in his village was one thing. He hunted. Not occasionally, but obsessively. The forests of eastern Finland were his home. He knew every tree, every hill, every frozen stream. He could read snow the way other men read newspapers. He understood wind, temperature, light, and shadow at an instinctive level that came from spending thousands of hours alone in the wilderness. When people asked him later how he became such an effective sniper, Häyhä gave a simple answer. He practiced. Before the war, he would spend entire days in the forest tracking animals, learning how to move without sound, how to remain still for hours, and how to shoot accurately in extreme cold. He competed in shooting competitions and usually won. But he wasn't trying to become a sniper. He was just doing what he loved. That skill became relevant in a way nobody expected when the Soviet Union invaded Finland on November 30th, 1939. The Winter War was supposed to last 2 weeks. The Soviet Union had 26 times Finland's population, 30 times as many aircraft, and vastly superior numbers of tanks and artillery. Stalin believed the Red Army would march through Finland in days. Joseph Stalin told his generals that Finland was a small country with a weak army. He expected total victory by Christmas. Finland had other ideas. The Finns knew they couldn't win a conventional war. Their strategy was simple: make the invasion so costly that the Soviets would agree to negotiate. That meant fighting defensively, using the terrain, and making every Soviet advance as bloody as possible. It meant surviving. Häyhä was called up immediately when the war began. He was assigned to the 6th Company of the 34th Infantry Regiment, which was responsible for defending a section of the border near the Kala River. This was not a glamorous duty. The Kala sector was frozen forest and open snow. Temperatures dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. The snow was so deep that movement without skis was almost impossible. For most soldiers, these conditions were a nightmare. For Häyhä, this was home. This was the environment he understood better than any Soviet soldier possibly could. The Soviets attacked the Kala sector with overwhelming force. They had artillery, they had tanks, and they had thousands of infantry soldiers. The Finnish defenders numbered in the hundreds. Standard military doctrine said the position couldn't be held for more than a few days. But standard military doctrine didn't account for the terrain, the cold, and men like Simo Häyhä. Here's what made Häyhä so effective. He understood that sniping wasn't about shooting. It was about position, patience, and preparation. Most snipers thought their job was to find a target and take the shot. Häyhä thought his job was to make absolutely certain that nobody could find him. Every night, he would prepare his positions for the next day. He would pack snow in front of him to prevent muzzle flash from revealing his location when he fired. He would pile snow near his mouth so he could spit into it throughout the day. Because in -40-degree cold, breath vapor was visible. A puff of breath could give away a position to an observant enemy. Häyhä eliminated that risk by keeping snow in his mouth to condense the vapor before it could become visible. He also made a decision that shocked other snipers. He refused to use a telescopic scope on his rifle. Every other sniper in every other army used scopes. They magnified distant targets and made long-range shots easier. But Häyhä looked at scopes differently. A scope added 4 inches of height to a rifle. That meant raising your head 4 inches higher above cover. In Häyhä's mind, those 4 inches were the difference between life and death. A scope could also fog up in extreme cold. A scope lens could catch sunlight and create a glare that revealed your position. And most importantly, Häyhä had spent years shooting with iron sights. He trusted them. They were simple, reliable, and perfectly suited to the distances he was shooting. Most of his shots were between 100 and 400 meters. At those ranges, iron sights were completely adequate for someone with Häyhä's skill level. The Soviets didn't understand what they were facing at first. In the first weeks of December, Soviet soldiers would advance through the snow in standard formation, expecting to overwhelm the Finnish positions through sheer numbers. Then men would start falling. One shot, one death. Then another. Then another. The shots came from somewhere in the trees, but nobody could spot the shooter. Soviet officers would order artillery strikes on suspected sniper positions, but when the barrage ended and soldiers advanced again, the shooting would resume. It was psychological warfare as much as it was sniping. Soviet soldiers began to fear the forest itself. By mid-December, Soviet commanders knew they had a serious problem. Reports from the Kala sector mentioned a sniper who was killing multiple soldiers every day. Some days it was 5 or 6. Other days it was more than a dozen. Soviet officers began offering rewards to anyone who could kill the sniper. They called him Belia Smrt, the White Death. The nickname spread through Soviet ranks. Soldiers would whisper about him at night. Some claimed he wasn't human, that he was a ghost or a devil. The rumors grew more absurd and more widespread. But the deaths were real. Häyhä's commanders noticed his effectiveness immediately. They gave him freedom to operate however he saw fit. He would head into the forest before dawn, take up a position he had prepared the previous night, and wait. Sometimes he waited for hours without firing a shot. When targets appeared, he made every shot count. His rifle was a Finnish M/28-30, a variant of the Mosin-nagant that had been modified for Finnish conditions. He knew that rifle the way a musician knows an instrument. He had fired it thousands of times in practice. He understood exactly how cold affected the bullet trajectory, how wind pushed the round, how to compensate for range. What the Soviets couldn't understand was how one man could be so effective in such terrible conditions. The answer was that the conditions weren't terrible for Häyhä. The cold that debilitated Soviet soldiers from warmer regions didn't affect him. The snow that made Soviet units struggle to move was something Häyhä navigated easily on skis. The forests that disoriented Soviet soldiers were familiar terrain to Häyhä. He wasn't fighting in harsh conditions. He was fighting at home. By January 1940, the Soviet command was desperate to stop him. They sent counter-sniper teams specifically to hunt for the White Death. These were experienced snipers with scoped rifles and orders to find Häyhä and kill him. It didn't work. Häyhä was too careful and too patient. He never shot from the same position twice if he could avoid it. He never revealed his location unnecessarily. When he did shoot, he could move to a different position quickly on skis before counter-snipers could triangulate his location. The Soviet counter-sniper teams became targets themselves. Häyhä killed several of them. The Soviets tried artillery strikes on areas where they suspected he might be hiding. They tried sending in larger groups of soldiers to overwhelm his position. They tried night attacks when he couldn't see to shoot. Nothing worked consistently. Häyhä adapted to every tactic. If the Soviets attacked at night, he would prepare defensive positions and use his submachine gun instead of his rifle. He reportedly killed over 200 Soviet soldiers with his submachine gun in addition to his confirmed rifle kills. The number that gets cited most often is 505 confirmed kills with his rifle, though some sources claim as many as 542. Even the lower number makes him the most successful sniper in any major war in history based on confirmed kills in such a short time frame. But here's what people miss about Häyhä. He wasn't hunting for sport. He wasn't trying to set records. He was defending his country against an invasion force that vastly outnumbered Finnish defenders. Every Soviet soldier he killed was one less soldier attacking Finnish positions. His actions had strategic value far beyond the individual kills. Soviet units operating in the Kala sector became demoralized and ineffective. Officers couldn't get their men to advance through areas where they knew the White Death operated. This allowed undermanned Finnish positions to hold territory they should have lost in days. By late February, the Winter War was going badly for the Soviets despite their massive numerical advantages. They had expected a quick victory. Instead, they had suffered horrific casualties and gained very little territory. Stalin was furious. International opinion had turned against the Soviet Union. But Soviet forces were slowly grinding down the Finnish defenders through sheer weight of numbers. Finland was running out of ammunition, running out of men, and running out of time. Peace negotiations began, but both sides kept fighting. On March 6, 1940, Simo Häyhä was in his usual position in the forest near Kala. It was late morning. He had already been out for hours. Then a Soviet soldier fired at his position. The soldier was using an explosive bullet, which was technically against international law but widely used anyway. The bullet hit Häyhä in the lower left jaw. The impact was devastating. The explosive bullet destroyed most of his jaw, blew out several teeth, and left half his face unrecognizable. Men who saw him after the shot thought he was dead. But Häyhä wasn't dead. Finnish soldiers carried him back to their lines and evacuated him to a field hospital. Doctors later said they had no idea how he survived. The bullet had destroyed his face, but somehow hadn't killed him outright. He fell into a coma. Days passed. The Winter War ended on March 13, 1940. Finland was forced to cede significant territory to the Soviet Union, but the country survived as an independent nation. Simo Häyhä woke up from his coma on March 13th, the same day the peace treaty was signed. His recovery took months. His face was permanently disfigured. He would need extensive reconstructive surgery. But he survived. And the legend of the White Death had survived with him. The Finnish government promoted him to second lieutenant during his recovery, a recognition of his extraordinary service. When journalists asked him how he felt about killing over 500 men, Häyhä gave a simple answer. He said he only did what he was told to do, and that he did it to defend his country. After the war, Häyhä lived quietly. He returned to farming. He hunted occasionally but never talked much about his experiences as a sniper. When people asked him for the secret to his success, he would tell them it was practice. He became something of a national hero in Finland, though he never sought attention. He lived until 2002, dying at age 96. He had outlived the Soviet Union itself by more than a decade. The story of Simo Häyhä raises questions that go beyond military history. What makes someone effective under extreme pressure? How much does natural skill matter compared to preparation and knowledge of terrain? And what separates the extraordinary from the merely good? Häyhä had natural shooting ability, but so did many other soldiers. What made him different was preparation. Every night, he prepared positions. Every shot, he considered wind, distance, cold, and visibility. Every decision, he thought about survival first and the shot second. Most snipers thought about killing the enemy. Häyhä thought about not being killed while killing the enemy. There's also something worth considering about the tools he refused to use. Every military expert told snipers to use scopes. Scopes were better. Scopes were modern. Scopes gave advantages. Häyhä looked at the specific conditions he faced and made a different calculation. He decided that in extreme cold, at the ranges he expected to shoot, with the need to remain undetected as his primary concern, iron sights were actually superior. He was right. His success proved it. Sometimes the conventional wisdom is wrong. Sometimes understanding your specific situation matters more than following what everyone else does. The Soviets never forgot him. After the war, Soviet veterans who had fought at Kala were asked about their experiences. Many mentioned the White Death. One Soviet officer said the fear of him was worse than the actual casualties he caused. Men were terrified to advance. They knew someone was out there, they knew he was unbelievably accurate, and they knew they wouldn't see him before he shot them. That fear affected Soviet operations throughout the Kala sector. One man with one rifle had created a psychological effect that went far beyond his actual kill count. Modern military snipers still study Häyhä. His techniques of position preparation, his understanding of how environment affects operations, and his focus on remaining undetected are all taught in sniper schools today. But what stands out most is the simplicity of his approach. He didn't try to make the longest shots. He didn't try to use the fanciest equipment. He focused on fundamentals: position, patience, preparation. He eliminated every variable he could control and accepted the variables he couldn't. The Winter War was Finland's finest moment and worst nightmare combined. The country survived, but at tremendous cost. Over 25,000 Finnish soldiers died defending their country. The Soviets lost somewhere between 150,000 and 300,000 soldiers, depending on which estimates you believe. Finland was forced to give up territory but remained independent. And one farmer from a small village near the Soviet border had become the most effective sniper in military history. So when Simo Häyhä lay in that frozen forest on March 6, 1940, and took the shot that would ultimately lead to him being shot himself, he wasn't trying to be a hero. He wasn't trying to set records. He was doing the same thing he had done for 98 days before that. He was defending his home, using skills he had developed over a lifetime of hunting in those same forests, and making decisions based on what actually worked rather than what conventional wisdom said should work. That's what made him extraordinary. Not that he was superhuman, but that he was supremely skilled, supremely prepared, and smart enough to trust his own judgment over everyone else's opinions. Thanks for watching this deep dive into one of history's most remarkable military stories. If you want more stories about the individuals and decisions that shaped history, subscribe to the channel. These stories deserve to be told.